So you have seen all of these different Gentoo installation videos, but you are still thinking, none of these are really what I'm looking for. I wish there's another one. Or maybe, perhaps you're here thinking that, oh, yet another video, there's already a million of them. I don't know what to do with them. But regardless, I figured I want to make a guide on installing Gentoo. Some of the guides I've seen have mistakes in them. They have things that have been, going wrong. And also a lot of guides that skip through things like kernel configuration and other things. I have no intent of doing any of that. Instead, I'm going to go into this. I'm going to go through the entire process. I'm going to configure my own kernel. Then I'm going to take it from my previous configuration because I'm installing it on the same hardware where I already have one Gentoo install. So I know if you do a neo fetch, you can see that I'm already running Gentoo. Let's just clear this one up because we don't need that stuff there. So, as you can see, I have the installation guide on the left and the term on the right. We are going to be using this format for our process. So we are going to be able to see what we're actually doing, and you're going to be able to use this in relation to the actual guide, and you can just look up the guide here and you won't have to look at it separately. So very simple format. So let's just make a few disclaimers. First, I'm doing this on AMD 64. There are, if you're doing different architecture, there's different packages and other things, though the process should be fairly similar. So I don't think it'll be too different, but use the correct handbook regardless. I'll link a bunch, I'll link them all down below, I guess, and whatnot, so you'll be able to see how to do it on what you're doing. Now, another thing I want to mention is that the way you would want to do this, usually, is not through the Gentoo installer, because that's only a command line, it's very inconvenient. What you would want to do instead, probably, is get a live installer of any distro. You can use anything. I like to use Ubuntu, because everything tends to work, like drivers, no problems there, I can get them all working with an Ubuntu Live CD. So, just get like an Ubuntu or whatever live CD with like, actual apps and browsers on them. Then boot in that and you can install Gentoo using that, which is a lot better because you can copy stuff from the actual guide and, copy your links for the tarball for stage 3 and, I'll get to this later, but you can do things a lot more conveniently if you're using live CD. So it doesn't make any sense to use the Gentoo media unless you absolutely need a minimal command line installer, but I would absolutely recommend using live CD. Now, one thing to take note of is if you are using live CD, you will want to look into this. I'll link this down below as well. It's installation alternatives. Uh, this covers information on what you need to do because there's a special steps. So, if you scroll down to uh, from non-tune to live series this part. Here we can see the actual differences because there's some things that are not there already. And the first thing is to make the teach into directory because this is where you're going to be mounting your root. Of course, you can use any other one, but I would recommend having this one because the guide uses this throughout. It makes things a lot easier. So just make this directory. So yeah. I'm not running a live CD, I'm actually running a system, but we probably want this directory still, so I'll go ahead and as I want to do this root, so we'll do it OS. So now we have an empty Gentoo directory. We're going to go into actual proper root shell later on, but for now we have mounted our, we have actually made a directory. Now, a few things you might want to do if you're using live CDs. At some point during this installation, we'll get to this when it happens. You want to do, instead of the command in the guide here, you'll want to use this command to mount the proc file system. So take note of that. Make sure you're actually using that. That's quite a bit later. But that's actually after tarball. And in this sense, this is incorrectly organized because you have the tarball a bit afterward. But yeah, you want to use the special different tarball install or unpacking command here when you're actually unpacking tarball if you're using live CD. Not really complex, and then you also want to I don't like this one. And you can, there's actually a thing that comes in the guide. We'll get back to that as well. Word section where it mentions proc and stuff. There's a different way of doing what this does, and this one tends to not work for me. So I use what's in normal install guide instead because it actually has something for it. It's different, but it does basically it achieves the same outcome and makes things work. So yeah. And then when you actually chroot, this is what you want to use instead. So yeah. Just some things you want to do differently. Here, if you are installing from live CD, make sure that you're doing these different things. You might not get issues if you don't do this. Uh, Nothing major really. And now we're going to scroll down here because there's this one, exit links distribution. I don't think it's actually meaningful. I have been able to install without doing this, but I'll follow this somewhat anyway. And the only part I really give a damn about is the CH sorting part because I'm not using parted, I'm using fdisk, or I'm going to use fdisk, and I know how to make space for Gentoo. I have a different drive, as we will cover in a bit. So let's just begin. Here's our first page of the handbook. It's the introduction page. It has some basic info about, install options, blah, blah, blah. You want just, it mentions that, the ISO, the live CDs, or it links that this thing here, under here. Now let's move on to choosing the right media. So same thing. This is just, about what to pick. So, the live DVD, minimal install CD. Oh god, I'm selecting too much stuff, and why not? And of course, as I said, you want to use a different distros live CD, so really don't listen to this stuff. This is not useful. You want to use like Ubuntu or Manjaro or whatever, use whatever you're familiar with, but try to use something else that already has a desktop on it because that's going to make things a lot more convenient. The stages, you want to use stage 3, simple as that. If you're going to use something lower, you might as well do a Linux from scratch. So, just use stage 3. It has the basic things. It's going to be the easiest way of doing things, and it's still not very bloated. It's just, it's the basic system installed. Now, we want to know, you might want to, of course, obtain the ISO, but you don't need it into ISO because you're using a different ISO and you are just going to download tarball from the internet, so you don't need the Gentoo ISO at all. So let's just worry about that. And once again, we're not booting any install media, so we can just skip through it. Though if you are actually booting Gentoo install media, there's some options you can do here. But besides that, let's move on. And once again, if you need to mod probe something, you can. If you're on the Gentoo media, which shouldn't be, you can make user accounts here. You also might want to make user accounts for your live CD if you have a need for doing that for some reason. I obviously don't need that, so I'm not going to worry about that. And I already have a user account because, well, I'm not a live CD. I'm on my existing Gentoo system, which I of course use as a day driver. And next we'll go to configure network. I know there's also a thing about SSH. So yeah, now we move on to actually making sure our network works. So we want to begin by checking if the network works. Usually this if config stuff isn't needed. You can just, we can just ping something to see if things work. So now we can ping Google, for example, and we can see it is pinging it successfully. If you want to configure any proxies or stuff, we can make proxies and stuff, and I mentioned testing part here. We can do that. If it doesn't work, then you need to set things up, of course, to work in whatever live CD you are on. You will have to actually have yourself connected to internet. So, if you're using like Wi-Fi, make sure you have your drivers on the live CD, that you're connected to Wi-Fi, etc. But yeah, we aren't worrying about this stuff because we're not doing it. Blah, 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 blah. We don't need any of this. Now, this is the part where you're probably going to begin, really. It's purchasing the disks. So we can scroll through this. It has bunch of info on what it means, how you might want to scheme your partitions space, and there's a few ways of doing it. So you might want to do legacy boot if you have that, if you don't have UEFI. And in that case, you might want to use the MDR table, which basically means you can really do whatever you want. You can there's no caveats. You can just make a root partition if you want, a separate home partition. You can make soft space. You don't need a boot partition with MDR and legacy boot. However, if you want to use legacy boot with GPR or whatever it's called, GPT, sorry. If you want to use GPT disk um, with legacy boot, you will need a small boot partition. So you'll need like a 1 or 2 megabyte boot partition for that. So take it into account. 2 megabytes is a safe bet usually. But yeah, very simple matters, nothing complicated about it. Just make a small boot partition. But we are doing EFI, so UEFI, because that's what I use, and that's really and something you probably want to use on anything modern. So yeah, we are going to be using GPT as well. So what you want to do to begin with is see what are our, existing disks. But before that, I think we should probably go root. So now we are actually on our Gentoo, so our, Gentoo is name of my computer or my host name. And we're now running root on this, so we can see what our disks are. So here we can see there's 2 disks. For one, there's the NVMe disk, and there's the SATA disk. The NVMe is titled NVMe 0 and 1, and the SATA is typed dev SDA. And this one is what my current Gentoo system is in, so you can see my current layout here. We have a 512 megabyte EFI system, so this is the boot partition. Then we have this 40 gig root partition, an 8 gig swap, and 883 gigabyte home partition. Here we have a Debian installation actually, so this is not empty, there's actually a Debian installation. You can see it's somewhat similar, but it's just using the automatic Debian partition. I couldn't be bothered to make a manual one with that, but yeah, it has a Debian installation on it. We are going to nuke the thing from the face of the earth, and it's going to be gone far. So we're not going to have any more of this Debian stuff here at the end. But yeah, the NVMe 0 and 1 is the one we're going to be modifying. If you have multiple disks or if you work at partitions, make sure you don't wipe anything existing. So make sure that you use the correct disk. And in our case, that will be the NVMe drive. So what you want to do, as it says here, is do fdisk. You could use parted, but I use fdisk because I'm familiar with that. So we are going to do fdisk /dev/nvme 0 and 1 p. We don't want to do partitions. We are doing the entire disk. So now we can do p inside here, and we can see the actual layout of this disk, and you can see that's my Debian installation disk. It's not this one, and therefore I can just use G to make a GPD disk label. So now if you do P again, you see it's empty because it's using this, because we just reformatted the label on it. So now it's completely empty. So now you want to start actually making our partition. So let's make our first partition. Let's make partition 1, because why not? That's probably what we should use. We can use default for this one, and then we want to do plus 512M. Now you can use whatever size you want, as long as it's big enough. I think it needs to be like over 128 megabytes or something. I like to use 512 because, just in case it's not too big, because this is what's going to store your kernels and stuff. So you want to make sure that you have enough space for those. As to why I have it at 512, it's a good balance, and it means things don't turn out. So we're just going to do that. That's a previous VFAT signature. We'll just get rid of it because why not? So now if you do P, why is it not scrolling down properly? Oh, well, you can see there's now a new partition. However, as you can see, it's called Linux file system, and we want to call it an EFI system. So what you want to do is you want to type T, and you want to do 1. What is happening with my scrolling? Seriously. 1 is the key for EFI system in fdisk, so you'll just use that. So now if you do P again, you can see it's an EFI system. Now we make another partition. Now let's make this our word partition. So we'll do 40 gigs for our root partition. This is because we don't want it running out of storage, but also we want to not to be too big, so we can have space for our home one. So we made 40 gigs. This is a very good situation for me. It's worked for me always, so 40 gigs is a good size in my opinion. You could go with less or more, depending on how much stuff you install on your root. I still have like 15 gigs free of mine, and mine currently is 40 gigs, so yeah. Once again, we're going to get rid of that, and now we can see we have it 40 gig root partition as well. Then we'll make a third one. Now I want to make a swap partition, so we'll do 8 gigs for that. My RAM is 16, so it makes sense, half of that. Yeah. And now once again, it's not swap, so we'll type T and we'll do. It's default because default's 2, 3, and we'll do 19, which is for Linux swap. And now you can see we have Linux swap there. Then we can just do and blah blah blah. We'll just do the entire thing. So just enter. And now you can see we actually have 4 partitions. So now we're going to do RW, which writes all of these things. For now it's only memory, but as soon as we W. So now if we do fdisk L, we can see that our NVMe is actually using our new sizes. And our Debian installation is no longer there, so I can no longer boot into Debian. So I nuked that off. So now I just want to go down. This is the guides on basically what I just explained, and we are going to be actually making file systems onto our partitions. So once again, we are using the NVMe partitions here. So those are what we're going to be dealing with. And we are going to continue. So as you can see, we have the viewing thing again, blah, blah. Ah, this is the BIOS part. Yeah, we're not going to dealing with the BIOS part. So we'll just, did I scroll up by accident? Oh yeah, I guess I did. Okay, well, we move down here. And this is the part we're interested in. So we want to first make our boot partition into FAT. I don't know why they have VFAT here. I mean, I guess this works as well, but we don't care about the VFAT. Instead, we'll just do mkfs.fat. Then we want to do f. 32. You can just do this all together, it doesn't matter. We'll do /dev/nvme 0 and 1p1. I believe we want to use partition 1 because that's what we have, as you can see, as our EFI system. Now, if you were doing a BIOS thing, you wouldn't use BFAT. You would probably use something like ext2 instead. But because we're doing UEFI, we are using FAT. So we want to make that FAT, and now it's FAT. And now we want to make our partitions. So we want to use 64 for our home and root partition. You can use something else if you want to stop BTRFS. You can. It's more complicated though because of some partitions, but yeah, it's possible. And we want to do the partition 2. And this should be that. And now it's going to take a bit of time because it needs to, handle all of those 30 gigs we set for it. And now we want to actually go ahead and do the same thing to our fourth partition, which is, as you can see, is also going to be an ext4 partition. So we want to do that as well. And now we have that made as well. So now we want to actually activate our swap. So we want to mk swap, and we want to do our third partition. What is happening with my scroll wheel? Seriously, what the heck is happening here? No, we are not doing anything weird with, so I want to do swap one as well, because that's very helpful. So now we actually have the swap from that file, and it should allow us to actually function a swap within our installed system. So we're going to move on to actually mounting our partitions. So we want to begin with the root one. So we want to mount. Our root partition was number 2, so we'll put that, and then we'll want to use our mnt/gentoo directory. Now we also want to mount other things, so we want to actually we'll just take the above one, we'll do the home partition, and then we'll want to though that doesn't exist yet, so we'll have to make it. And for that purpose, we want to mkdir slash mmt slash gentoo slash home. And now I want to run this again, and now it's mounted. Another thing we want to mount is this, and once again, we don't have a directory yet. I'm just preparing this early on. Now the guide says that you should do this later, but it doesn't matter. You can do it here. I'm just going to do it now, so I don't forget, because it's going to mess things up. We aren't going to get a bootable system if you fail to boot it now, so we want to actually make sure we have it mounted early enough. And now we have all of our partitions mounted, so we can move on to actually getting the tarball. And this tarball has our basic things. Yeah, you want to check your date, so you know if you're running date, this one seems correct because it's my system with my time zone. You want it to be within the ballpark of what your current time zone is. If it doesn't have to be exact, but you want to make sure it's actually somewhat correct. And here it shows how to actually set things if you need to. Now, as you can see here, we want to choose the correct one. So I want to actually go to gentoo.org, and I want to go to downloads, and here we can see we have our tarballs. Now, if you want to do system D, you want to pick the system D one, but we are doing OpenRC, so we'll take copy link address here. Now we'll just cd slash mnt slash gentoo. Actually, let me go back to guide first, and we can scroll down here, and we can see you want cd into here, and then you want actually w get this link that we just got for ourselves. So this is our tarball. Once again, you want to get the correct one, so let me go back here. You want to make sure actually getting the correct architecture, and that you're you know, getting the correct type. So I know you want to do OpenRC if you're doing OpenRC, system D if you're doing system D. If you're doing no multilib, you want to get no multilib one, and so on. So I know, just make sure you're getting the correct one because that's going to be needed for your system to function. Now let's go back here, and let's unpack it, I guess, because that's what you're going to have to do. So it's a bunch of verification stuff and other things. We already have the folder because, you know, if you do alas, you can see we have this here. And this is going to install our basic tools like Portage and, you know, other things. So we want to do that. So I want to use this command here. You can just paste this in, by the way. Okay, I didn't copy it, it seems. Oh, well. My microphone cable is under my control key. No wonder it didn't work. Well, now we have it. And the star thing there actually indicates anything after that. So we can just do this. Now it's going to unpack that. Now it's going to take a little bit of time. And this is what it's going to do. It's just going to make our directories. It's going to install all of our files that, you know, are needed for the system to function. So now if you do an ls, you can see we actually have our dev, our whole, we have the home already, but we have our media, opt, root, admin, boot bin, etc. Or not etc. But that's probably not stand. That does stand for etc. It's etc. For this, we have our lib, we have our lost sound, which we already had. MNT, you see we have MT hearst one, proc for like process stuff and run. And we still have this. We could remove this, but that's something we can also do later. We don't really need to worry about this one, but yeah, we can now remove the, if you want to, we could remove this one later, but we're not going to worry about it now. Why not? In case something goes wrong, we can easily reinstall it this way by keeping it there. We also have like sys, USR, TMP, and var, so we have everything. Now, next we want to make sure we compile things. So now we're actually going to start compiling soon, so I want to make sure compiling options are set correctly. So we, you know, we want to use this make.conf. So, you know, if you actually I'll go and edit this one. I'll show what it looks like. I'm just going to go ahead and copy my existing one onto here because why not? You can see this is very bare bones, but I'm just going to copy what I already have because I already have a first one on my system. Slash Portage slash make dot conf2 slash mnt slash Gentoo slash etc. and Portage and make dot conf. So I want us to copy this. So now if you go back into editing this one, we have everything I have in my current system. So I have 6 core CPU and 16 gigabytes of RAM. So I can actually fit 10 makeups here. So yeah, actually let's look down here. So our C flags basically, these are flags. The easiest way to go is just to do March equals native. I don't see why you wouldn't do this. You can like type in like Skylake or whatever, depending on what your CPU or like a specific thing for your CPU. Well, March equals native seems to work at least for my CPU, no different from manual one. So I'd use March equals native, and that's that. And we also want to have O2 and pipe. You want to have O2 and not O3 probably, unless you want to have O3, but O3 can be unstable. And it's not like a huge benefit in performance either. I would recommend sticking with O2 because it's just more stable and more functional. And if you want to know do something else though, not too much equals native, you can look at C flags thing. Now we also have makeups I mentioned earlier, so we can go that. That basically means how many jobs can be done simultaneously, and as it says here, you actually might want to do your CPU cores +1. I have 6 cores, 6 threads, so I do 7. However, you want to make sure it's enough RAM for each. The recommended of 2 gigs for each of these jobs is a good idea. I have had crashes with lower RAM per each, so with like a laptop. So you want to make sure you have enough RAM per each job. But you want to, if you do, then you want to do CPU cores or CPU threads +1 actually. And I have 7 in this case. It's going to speed up your compilation by a lot to actually have these jobs, so make sure you define these appropriately. Just doing it one is going to be very slow. Let's just say that. And then we have a bunch of like use flags and stuff. Once again, when I get back to this later, you might actually have to do use flags before your word update, which is going to come on the next page. Because of issues, I had to when I installed Gentoo, but I had to like manage Bluetooth or whatever to get things working. But I have already everything here. This off stuff I would install. I'll cover this more detail later when I actually get to the section. But I already have it set up at this point. You can do it later. It doesn't matter. Now, indeed, once you have this updated, you have actually set your completion options, your makeups, you have all of this set up. We can move on to installing our system already, so that's great. So now we're actually going to get into CH routing. Now you might want to do this mirror selecting thing. I don't have mirror select, or I might have it because I'm on Gentoo, but your live CD probably won't have it. Don't worry about it. I have never seen any issues with it, and we'll just ignore that. This one I want to do though. So I want to copy our DNS info so that our internet still works within our CH root. So I want to do this, and now it should be fine. And now I want to start mounting once again. Here in this proc, you want to use a special command from the alternatives if you're using live CD, and also want to use a special thing for the tarball because, or from the tarball, which we did earlier, because that's needed. But because I'm on a normal system, I can just use this, or a normal Gentoo system, I can just do this normally. If you're on live CD, you want to make sure you're actually using the installation alternative method. Now we want to do this, so I want to just paste that in. Then you want to do this one. And now, if you're using systemd, you want to do this make our slave thing. I'm using OpenRC, so I'm not going to worry about those. Those are only needed for systemd, so we can just skip them if you're using OpenRC. And here's what I was referring to earlier. So if you're using live CD, instead of doing the last thing in there, do this instead of doing the whatever it is. Let me scroll up to it actually. Instead of doing whatever this is, you probably want to do this instead. And then this, and then this. So these three things you want to do instead. And that should help your thing to work. Now I want to see a truth, so now we're going to go back here. Let's see if this one works or not. Here's our command. So we want to, I believe that stage where we can see a truth. Yep, we can. So we can just copy paste that in. Now we are in the CH root. I want to actually update our environment, so I want to do this. We want to update the environment, and we want to start source to this. And also what you might want to do is this one. Now here we go. So now we are actually showing our CH root. This only for visuals, this last line, but still, let's do it. And this where it tells you to mount your boot partition. I already have mine mounted, so don't need to worry about that. Now we're going to go to actually configure our Portage. So indeed we had an invade repository. So we want to sync our repositories. We want to make sure we have everything up to date. Now if you want to do, you can, if you want the more up to date things, you can do a merge sync, but that's going to take a while to do and it's not needed really. So we're not going to do that. Instead we're going to just move on. Indeed there's some stuff about reading news items. You want to read these when you're updating things and stuff. I'm not going to worry about that now. And we're going to worry about our profiles and say the correct one. So I want to first see what do we have available. And as you can see, there's many different options. And our the one I currently have is this. It's very bare bones. It's going to lack a lot of things for desktops, and it's going to cause a lot more work. So if you want to run like a window manager or GUI, which we will, we are going to. I'm going to do a configuration video later on, so stay on here for that. But we are going to install a desktop, and therefore we are going to do eSelect profile set, and let's see what is our number. It's 5. We are doing stable bench, and we are doing desktop, and you want to make sure this is same version as your tarball. So you want to make sure the number here matches your tarball version. In our case, it's 17.1. That's what is currently this is showing here, but it's 17.1 regardless. So we are using 17.1. So that's what we want to use. If there's a new version, we use it. That's what you might want to set. Now, what really matters is our version there is the same thing as our actual tarball is. And in our case, 5 is the desktop version of that, and first stable branch, so we're going to set to 5. And now if you see this, you can see that we have our profile set, but you can see it's no longer starting first one. Instead, we have the 5th one selected, which is what we want. So now we want to, if you want to, know multilib for some reason, that's here. Now we want to operate the purge. This is going to take a long time. It's going to take hours probably. In my case, it takes like 2 hours. If you have slow hardware, it's going to take a long time. It updates everything. So, in accordance with this profile, and it's going to install more stuff in it and do this one. So, if you want to do something like GNOME System D, it's going to take a long time to do. If you just do it like desktop, it's going to take less time to do, but still quite a while. So we're just going to copy paste this command here, and then it's going to be a whole bunch of waiting. So now we just wait and see does it give us any errors, so we can fix those if it does. And no, it does not. It might. In that case, pay attention to what it says. It will usually, it might say something like, following use flag changes are necessary. In my case, let's do that. So it's it tells me to like disable SQLite and to disable Bluetooth, and then it will work. I already have those things disabled, or I just have Bluetooth disabled, and I had no problems now. So because I got based on my old mail.conf. So you can so now the use flag section is next, but if you get those errors here, just skip the video a bit and watch me go through the use flags, and then come back here and add in whatever this one might tell you to. So now we're going to start merging these. It's going to take a long ass time to do, but you know, we're going to merge all of them. And now we're going to wait for it to start doing its thing. And as you can see, my CPU usage is going up, as shown here. In my last window manager CPU thing. And we can barely see it's going up now because I'm using my entire all of the jobs to compile. Of course, if you want something lighter, if you don't want to take up so many resources, what you want to do instead is use less jobs, because the less jobs you do, the less cores do things, the less your CPU is used. So now, because I'm using 7 jobs, I'm using basically my entire system's CPU, and it's going to do a lot. And so that my computer while it's doing it. Now, this is going to take a long time to do. As I said, it's probably going to take an hour or two, so I'll leave this here. I'll come back up once I'm done, and I'll see you after that. So, welcome back. I have now actually finished the words update, and what that means is I'm now able to continue. That took about 2 hours, pretty much the minute, so on my hardware it takes about 2 hours. I'm running the i5 9600KF as far as CPU goes, so you can use this point of reference. If you have faster CPU with more cores and a whole lot of RAM, you probably be quicker. If you're running a slower CPU, then you're probably going to be slower. And on my laptop running dual core old i5 from like 4th gen, that thing takes multiple times longer than this desktop does updating it. So uh, that's that. It took about 2 hours. It's done now, so we can continue and move on to discussing the use variable. So let's see. Do we have our? Oh yeah, we have. Okay, well yeah. So we want to go to our make.conf. As you can see, I already have some use flags here. These are not by default. At all. There's nothing here by default. You need to add a line stating use yourself, and then you need to add that much stuff. And what that is depends on what you need. So what I have here is alarm sensors. This means apps are compiled with support for alarm sensors. I used this back with Qtile to have like um, a widget showing the temperature, but I don't have that now. And I haven't found one for ice window metri yet, though I might figure one out, I guess. But yeah, this basically enables alarm sensor support. Then I have pulse audio, so I'm enabling pulse audio support for apps. So because I use pulse audio for my audio, this compiles apps to work with it. Some apps need this flag, so it's good to have. Then I have VDPO, which basically I think it's some sort of it's an acceleration thing for me to use my GPU, so I have it on, of course. I have minus systemd. This means systemd is disabled, so things are not built with systemd support. Because I'm running OpenRC, I don't need systemd support, so I have this disabled, so nothing will build with support for systemd, unless I manually make it, which I won't, because there's no reason to. Now I also have minus GNOME, so things don't come with GNOME support because I don't use GNOME. I use Ice Window Manager, and I have been using Qtile as well. And now I also have minus bindized. I'm not sure what this does, but I figured I'd add it in because I found it online, and it hasn't done me any harm yet. So it's not a feature I need. So I just turned off. Access C, also I don't need that, so I turned it off. Bluetooth, I don't have one, I turned that off as well. I also don't have it in my kernel, so that's off. I also have minus KDE because I don't use KDE again, so KDE is disabled. Also Qt4 and Qt5 are disabled. I don't use all of Qt apps. If I do, I can enable it individually for a package. Then I have minus cups. I don't print stuff. This is a print service, so I have disabled that flag. And PPDS also have disabled. I don't need that feature. And SAMP I have also disabled. These are all like SSHing, I think, related things, or are these like print related things? I don't remember exactly, but it's stuff I don't use anyway. You can research on your own what all kinds of these flags do. But I have disabled these things because I don't need them basically. So if there's something that you don't want or need, you can add minus, and then that way by default, Portage will disable that use flag, and it won't build support for it. and that means less files from your software, lighter software that's going to run a bit faster. It's going to not have as much stuff on it. It's going to mean less bloat and etc. So if you know you're not using certain desktop, if you know you're not using GNOME, you might want to do minus GNOME. You know you're using OpenRC, you might want to do minus systemd, etc. But usually you wouldn't use global use flags too much because I know all of these things are things I either do or don't use globally. But if you know if there's something you only need for a single package or something, you shouldn't have it here. You should add that individually in the package using the package that you use. I'll link that down below as well, I guess. But on how that stuff works. But yeah, you want to usually use individual package use flags. But when you need something globally, you need global plus audio support, or you're not using systemd, so you don't want systemd support anywhere, then you can add them to make.conf. So the minus before something means you're disabling the use flag and you're not building for it, but not having the minus means you're specifically building for that thing. So I'm building these supports into everything that has the function ability to. So that's that. Now let's go on to exiting this. I think I have covered these flags. And yeah, you can also use this description thing if you want to read up on it, and why not? So yeah. Now, as you can see here, also there's examples. And if you don't use GTK, you can disable GTK. You can disable GNOME. You can enable KD and stuff. You get the idea. Also, we have here another example. If you do minus and then star, that means it minus everything. So all defaults are reset, and basically it won't take into account any defaults. And of course, that's something you probably don't want to do because it means your profile is been useless and you'll have to enable every single use flag by yourself, and there's a lot of them. So, let's see where's the thing for actually finding our use flags. So, if you run this, these are use flags. So, there's a ton of them. And frankly, you have to do every single one of them manually if you disable it here. But if you for some reason need to, you can. So it is a possibility. Or if you want to do every single use flag for every package manually, you can disable everything here and then do it individually for every package. Though that takes a lot of time. But I wouldn't encourage doing this, especially if you're a new user. It's going to make things very inconvenient if you disable all your use flags, and frankly, that's that. Another thing you can do is configure text license variables. So now we can go back to our make.conf. You can see we have accept license here and we have the star. That means I'm accepting every license. You could limit them. You have this listed here. So, you can do like free only. You can only do free. This is the default as well. You could, only do like free and something else, extra. You can really choose what licenses do you want to allow by default. So, yeah, but I always run my installs with the ask flag anyway. So I know what I'm getting myself into, and I probably know what the license for software I'm installing is before I install it. So I don't need to accept it specifically. Instead, I have decided to put the star symbol and accept everything, and then just decide what to install myself. That way I don't have to every time do this conf, because it's what you need to do if you need to accept a license or change something for an individual package from your global things. So I'm just accepting all flags and being happy. Now, let's move on from here and look into this. So as you can see, if you want to systemd, there's a different thread. So it's called systemd. It's very simple. This instructs you through how to get systemd working. But I'm not doing systemd. I'm doing OpenRC. So we're going to continue with OpenRC and this guide. So now what we want to do is we can run this thing. It will show us the different time zones. I know what I want to do, or different regions. I know what I want, and what I want to do is this thing here. So I want to echo Now we want to pick your correct thing. So usually it's like your regions, it will be like America or Europe, as shown here, like this. So it would be uh, Europe in my case, because I'm in Europe, and then we would do Helsinki because I'm in Finland. And we also want to make sure we have quotation marks around this so it actually is taken as a string because that's what it needs to be. Then we do the arrow to signify this is where we're going to put it, and then we are going to do etc. slash time zone. Now we have our time zone set in that place. Well, of course, we want to configure our actual local time. We want to actually configure our time. We have only set our time zone, but we haven't yet configured our data and actually made our time zone that. So now we are actually going to do that. And now we should have our time as being Helsinki time, which is of course what I want. And of course you want to do this with whatever your actual time zone is. And you can see here it's actually updating this with these parameters. You can see how it's going US Searcher, Zone Info, Europe, Helsinki. You get the idea. Now we want to insert our locale. Our locale basically determines our formats, our language, stuff like that. So we want to set it whatever we want. So we want to do, we want to first go to this thing. We want to type in our correct locale. The one I like to use is ntb dot utf8. I would recommend having at least like one utf8 thing. Actually, we'll disable that minus here, and then we'll do that. We'll follow the C thing format, and we don't need this though. It's actually going to regenerate that afterward anyway, but we're still going to remove it because why not? Now I want to run this thing called local gen. If you have used like Arch before, this is probably very familiar because it's basically the same thing, except with Arch you actually uncomment the thing, but it's the same files, same thing. So it's similar to Arch here. So yeah. So now if you actually, you can see that it's still generating the C thing. It's out here, but it's still using the C. Why is it using C? Because it's some sort of a default locale thing. So now what you can do is select local list, and we can have lots of different ones. Currently we have the C things enabled. We don't want to keep that, it's going to cause problems. So we are going to set to the one we just type in, which is ntb utf8, and that's the fourth one. So now if you run this, we can see the fourth one is what I have enabled. And now we want to actually do this. So we want to update the environment again, just so it actually follows our new changed values with the locale and the time zone and etc. etc. So I want to do this, and now we actually have it reloaded. And now is the fun part. We are going to configure a kernel. And that's of course gonna be fun. Did we configure a network already? Let's see, is it here? Oh yeah, configure system is later on. So we should be fine. So this is the part that's going to take a while to do actually. We are going to have to configure a kernel, and there's a few things about this, and this is probably the most interesting part of the thing, or most challenging part. You can use chain kernel. I'm not going to. I want my own custom kernel. Now, before I do all of that though, what I want to do is install sources and go through the manager options and the current things you want to keep in mind when you're actually configuring your kernel. So first thing first, you want to install the sources. So now we're installing sources. This does not install a kernel. It only installs sources for them. We will have to make our own kernel afterward. So I want to merge these packages. It shouldn't take very long. These are not large packages, so we'll just wait for that. And yeah, once we get through that, what we can do is being configuring things. There's some things that are mandatory, and I'll show you. Like I look through here, you can see there's some things we actually have to enable, but after that, there's some things we can play around with. a lot of things you can play around with actually. So yeah, yep, it's done. So now we can actually list our this directory usr/src/linux. This is a symlink that has all of your source in it. So if you do this, we can see it's the point in this source which is installed. So now we want to actually, and also what we can do is this eSelect kernel list. It shows we have the option for this kernel now. So what I want to do next is manually configure it. So you could install this PCI utils thing. What this does is basically it allows you to see details about your hardware. I already know mine, so I'm not going to bother with that. You want to configure a kernel to have all of the needed drivers and such as to why this won't be useful. It shows you what your hardware is, and of course you want to know that stuff. But we're not going to worry about that because we don't need to know, because I already know. Now, what I want to do before anything is I want to emerge something. I want to emerge this thing called LC4. This is and now I want to use AppArch version as well. So you want to do AppArch/LC4. What this does is it's a kernel compression thing, and basically it allows us to configure our kernel, or not configure, but compress our kernel through LC4, which is a fast format, or a fast compression method. And it's going to help speed up our boot times by like a second or two. It's not significant, but it's, why not? So you have to install this package if you want to use the LC4 method. I'm not sure about the rest of them, but I know like LC4 needs to be installed separately if you want to use it. Now, if you want to use like gzip or something, then you don't need to install it separately. That's built in already, so you can just use gzip as this if you don't want to use LC4. Now you want to continue by actually making the kernel. So we'll cd/user/src/linux, and here what you want to do is type in make menu config. It's important to have your boot partition mounted as well, because not yet, but when you start making things, actually compiling them, you need to have your boot partition mounted. Now let's make our menu config. Now we're going to go through some things you need to enable. So these are in the server wiki. So you want to make sure to enable your generic driver options. So basically you can do this in Gentoo Linux. It should be enabled already actually. You can see the Gentoo Linux already supported. This stuff is all on. Then you want to make sure to pick whichever system you're using. So if you're using OpenRC, leave it this way. If you're using systemd, then pick systemd here under the super strange systems thing. Now I want to actually start looking into some other things. So first thing first, you want to make sure all of these things listed here are enabled. It's going to then it would. Why is it scrolling weirdly? I have no clue. You want to do this. You want to save it, and then you want to exit. Now, of course, you want to do other stuff. You might want to enable Xorg things. There's a wiki page on that, etc. But I'll just go ahead and now I need this thing to stop scrolling by itself. That's going to help a lot. Thank you. But before we mess with that anyway, we're actually going to use our old config, so we'll copy. Then we'll do. Actually, we can't copy yet. If you launch a new terminal, why is it scrolling by itself? I'm seriously goddamn confused. Why is it scrolling? Anyway, I want to csr/src/linux/.config. We are copying this to /md/gen2/usr/src/linux/ .config. And yeah, of course, we want to run as root. So we'll just run this as doas again. So now we actually have this file, so we should be able to go back into our main root config, and we should have my actual options enabled. So let's go through why I enabled everything and what I want to do differently. So as you can see, this by default gzip, I have made it into ASCII4 because that's what I'm doing. I have also disabled this thing because I don't need it. I have this thing disabled, no, it's by default, nobody uses it. I disabled once again unnecessary. Buddha result once again unnecessary. Default hostname, we don't need one. Default init path, we don't need one. Swap, this one we want to enable because we have a swap file. If you don't have a swap file, you don't need this, but I do, so I want to enable this. This one is mandatory anyway. I have received POSIX message queues because I don't need support for it. I don't use the legacy applications that need this, so if unless you're using like the actual things to use this, then you don't need this. I don't need it. I don't need this turn like page either, and therefore I don't have it. I don't need this. I don't need these calls either. Everything works without them, so I have that disabled. Usually the same thing. I don't need it. Auditing support is unnecessary. I mean, we don't really need to keep order of things. Also, I have not changed this in any way. Timer system, I have changed it to constraint node index. Keeps the CPU performing well, and I have enabled hyper switch and timer support. Why is it scrolling up? Seriously, what the hell? But I have enabled hyper switch and timer support because pulse audio needs that. Preemption, I have used the voluntary kernel preemption. I had some issues with the low latency one, so I changed this. This one, I have disabled everything pretty much, and I have set it simple. These aren't necessary, really. We don't need them. At least I don't. If you need some of these for some reason, then feel free to. I don't need like BSD stuff unnecessary. We want to isolate our CPU, preferably. Much better for like security and also for, I guess it doesn't affect security, but it does affect performance because it means your CPU process aren't, being affected by other things. So you can see here's something. So basically, you need to make sure you're not being disturbed, and that means you don't like get crashes and stuff as easily. RCU, once again, nothing done there. We don't need this. You can, if you want easierly debugging, you want to have your configuration file separately, you can. You can enable kernel headers. I don't see a need to do that. So once again, pretty useless. I have changed these 15, 15, and 12. It's a bit smaller than default with these log buffer sizes. Just saves a bit of space. Not really too important. I don't have a scaler enabled. That's why this is grayed out. Control group, I have pretty much left at default. I'm not messing with it. I don't know too much about that, so I don't want to mess with it. Namespaces, once again, default stuff. Don't have it disabled. I don't have this stuff enabled. I don't. Now I'm enabling Initramfs because I have like NVIDIA drivers and stuff, so I want to make sure to have Initramfs enabled. So I had it enabled. As you can see, I'm only using LC4 for it. So yeah, we are using LC4 for Initramfs as well. We are using O2, of course. That's what we want to do. We don't want to do like we could do OS, but that's slow. So we'll use O2, which works better. In terms of performance, of course, and it is stable enough. O2 by far, it's actually pretty more stable than the other one. It's a bit bigger, but it's not going to be big, so it doesn't matter. And in our case, anyway, if you need a really small kernel, though, you might want to use the optimized for size thing, though. And this one, we don't have anything once again changed. It's not something I want to mess with. I have set slab here. You want to slab, it's the faster one. Why is it scrolling? I'm so confused, I swear. And we want to also have cache to emerge. It helps with speed. And we're enabled. Let's keep this stuff enabled. That's by default. It seems to work. Why is it scrolling? I don't get this trash. Why is it scrolling? Of course, you want to have 64-bit kernel because we're using 64-bit system. If you're doing 32-bit, you don't need that. Now personal time features, we have enabled FMP of course. We have disabled this because we don't need it. And what this is basically, as it says here, it's basically like an old thing. But my system is very new, so I don't need it. We want to do avoid speculative indirect branches. It's better enabled. Basically, it's a leak thing. We want to avoid that. We don't need this again because I'm using 64-bit. I'm not enabled this either because I don't need these third-party extended platforms. It's stuff like the Steam Scale, MP, blah blah, stuff I don't even know about. I don't have low power system support enabled because I don't know, I don't need it. This peripheral stuff, I don't need it, and I don't have these ones. Again, I'm not running SLC, I'm running a desk processor. We want to have the single WChan output, it makes our system faster. As you can see here, it basically sacrifices the accuracy of these WChan values uh, to basically not have as much overhead, and we want to avoid overhead. Now, here you want to check whether it's appropriate. So, I'm using a Core 2 or new Xeon. Actually, I'm using an i5 900KF, as I said. But any like newer i processor, or like your i3, i4, or i5s or i4s don't exist, but i3, i5s, i7s, etc. You want to use this option. Why is it scrolling up? What is happening? But yeah, you want to have this as this. We don't need this all the MDMU support either. Now, I have set my maximum number of CPUs to 6, which is my core count or thread count, and why not? You want to do this because having this extra takes up RAM, so you want to set this to whatever your cores are. I have disabled scheduler because you don't need it with these few cores, and it actually probably affects performance negatively here. Yeah, I have overheat property enabled, of course, that's good. I have Intel MCU features enabled because I'm running Intel CPU. And this is like thermal monitor and stuff, so you want, monitoring and keeping things up on track. Now, do we want performance monitoring? Yes, but we don't want the AMD one. We only want the Intel one, so we are disabled the last one. We don't need this permanent IPL emulation either, so we're disabling that. We are enabling CPU microcontroller, but only for Intel. If you're using AMD, of course you want to do everything with AMD, but I'm using Intel, so I'm doing Intel stuff. Register support, yeah, we want to keep that, of course. CPU ID, this is like info on things, and keeping information of your CPU and such. So I'm keeping it enabled. This file page table support, we don't need it. It's like if you have huge storage, which you don't, so don't worry about just disable this one. If you're a desktop user, I guarantee you don't need this. Then you don't need an FCMD stuff. We don't need NUMA because we don't have like a ton of nodes for handling NUMA. I mean, if you're running like a Threadripper, you probably want this enabled, but I'm not. I only have like a single memory controller, so I have disabled. If you have multiple, you probably want disabled. You don't need this low memory corruption thing unless you really are paranoid about it. It's a bit unnecessary usually. It basically just checks for some corruption stuff, but it doesn't really do much, and it's kind of useless. We have enabled MTRR because I need it for my NVIDIA stuff. Cleanup support, this, yeah, we're cleaning things up, making things faster. Also, once again, I need this enabled for my NVIDIA. Then we want a VFI, of course, as I mentioned earlier. I have my timer free because it's 1000 hertz. Not needed, you can make it lower, but reduce latency a bit. KXX system call I have enabled because I need that for, I don't care what I need it for, but I need it for something. Oh yeah, I need it for this rear kind of Kernel thing, which I need to have for some other stuff. I don't know what it's needed for, but still, it's needed for something. Now, yeah, we have all this stuff disabled, we don't need it. I know we want to only emulate execution, we don't want full emulation here. But it's good to have some sort of emulation, just so we can run things in case we need to. Power management, Yeah, if you want to suspend your system or hibernate it, you want to enable respective things here. If you don't, then you can disable them. ACPI, of course, I have enabled. There's a bunch of additional stuff I have disabled a bunch. I disabled better. I have enabled AC adapter because I'm using a desktop system. If you're using a laptop, you want this stuff enabled, of course. I have disabled the video thing because we don't need this. Because we are not using integrated graphics basically, and this one needs integrated graphics. And we have a bunch of stuff here. We have the Intel thing enabled. No, like nothing special here really. You can pretty much stay with this default. If you want to disable something, you can. CPU frequency, so I have done some things here. So I'm using a desktop system, and I want my computer to run fast. I don't need power save, so I just set my default performance. Why is it scrolling? Seriously, stop, stop. And I have it set to I have basically not set anything else here, so I have disabled everything else from kernel. So it's only performance for me. You might want to use like power save if you're running like a laptop or something. And I have enabled this thing as well because I'm running Intel. And this one I have disabled those two things at the bottom. Now I need this thing to stop scrolling. I don't know why it's scrolling. It's nonsense. It should stop. I wonder if my mouse is broken. Maybe it is. In that case, it means I have a new mouse, which would be a pain. Now bus options, I have enabled this as a generic system frame buffer. If you're using like an NVIDIA proprietary driver, you need this, so make sure that you have this enabled. So that you actually go to your terminal and display something. Binary emulations, I have IA32 emulation enabled, so I can run 32-bit stuff, a little bit like wine and stuff. Firmware drivers, yeah, nothing too special. We have once again selected here with the EFI stuff. And we have selected this export DMI declaration, which we need. I have disabled virtualization because I don't use virtual machines on this. I have a separate machine for it. It's like an extra network. Turn over to the parent options. So yeah, we have KBrooks enabled. We apparently want that. We optimize for these parents. Once again, we want to optimize for things. We don't want issues, which not doing this could cause. We are the overflow. We are per system cost for 32-bit time. Once again, we want to have 32-bit support. And we have our GC plugins. I haven't messed with this too much as I have disabled. Our load module support, very simple. We have module unloading enabled, nothing first enabled, and yeah. Enabled block layer, very simple. I showed this earlier. It's as it was before, from where I showed it. So EFI is enabled, and the overall block layer ST support is there. IO schedulers, I don't have anything. If you want to use one, you can. XML format things, you can once again do whatever you want with this. I have already just kept this as it is, so I don't really understand this too much. So I would say default, it works fine, it's no issues there. But if you know you want to disable something, you can. Now, memory management options. We want to make sure we have our virtual memory map. If you want to hold that hot at it, you can enable that function. We want to offer compaction because it helps us, compacting our memory and keeping things well compact and manage our memory basically in a more effective manner. No, nothing else here really stands out as anything. It's pretty much just normal stuff. Everything else is disabled for me. Up to you what to do with this. If you know, you can use the help tabs here to actually get things done. Networking support, we have disabled, not here, but we have disabled network testing things because I don't need that stuff. I've disabled like Bluetooth, amateur radio, because we don't need any of that stuff. Now, do I have something else here, like Ethernet and stuff? I guess that might not be here, because I'm not finding it here. So I'm just gonna leave that be. I also have Wi-Fi disabled because I don't want it. Device drivers, you want to make sure this is the one thing where you want to have all kinds of things enabled. So you don't need the PC card thing. You probably don't need this thing either. It's like an old thing. Now you want to have PCIe support, probably if you are using any PCIe stuff, which you probably are. Now Rapid.io, once again, are needed stuff. It's old nonsense. Now I want to here once again enable all of the mandatory stuff. Very simple. Bus devices, nothing there. This one, yeah, I have it enabled. To connect user space to kernel space. Then we have none of this stuff enabled. Parallel port, I don't have one, I don't need it. I have disabled. Plug and play support, I have enabled, but nothing special about it. Bulk devices, once again, I have loopback enabled, but nothing else really. Inside it, though I do have the thing enabled as a whole. NVMe, I have an NVMe in my system, so of course I have disabled. Very simple. Nothing here. Missed devices, I don't need any of this stuff, so I have disabled. This one is disabled, it's old anyway, deprecated. Same thing here, as I showed before. I also have enabled this CD-ROM support and turmeric support and you know, asynchronous scanning. This stuff helps me with turning, you know, through like connecting my phone and connecting through other devices and stuff like that. This stuff I haven't messed with a lot, so I'm not going to go into it. Firewire, we don't need it, so we have disabled. Macintosh, I'm not on the Mac, so I have disabled. If you're on Mac, enable them. Network device, now this is where I want to configure my like Ethernet devices. So once I have my wireless disabled, I'm not using PvP, so I have disabled. Let's see, do we have our Ethernet tower support? So I have disabled everything that isn't Realtek. And it's only this one Realtek driver I enable as well, because I only need that one driver to work. If you need like additional stuff, then you can. Can we stop with the scrolling? Input device support. Yeah, I have disabled this mouse and joystick because it's like this is like PS2 and old stuff. We don't need it. We do want an interface for drivers and Xorg and stuff. We do have keyboards and mice here enabled, though we have disabled the PS2 stuff and such. Joysticks, once again, we have enabled Xbox Gamepad because I have an Xbox controller and everything else disabled. Tablets, we have enabled tablets, but nothing else. Touchscreens, I don't have, are disabled. Miscellaneous devices, once again, nothing in there enabled. Though I have the whole thing enabled as a whole, because why not, in case there's something. Though I don't think it actually does anything. Yeah, it doesn't affect kernel, so I just have it enabled, it doesn't do anything. This stuff I have also disabled because I don't have any of that stuff. So I know, like, game port, I don't have that old stuff. And Saber IO port, I don't have that either. Or I do, but I don't use it. Cartier devices, very simply, I haven't messed with this really. But you want to make sure you have your TTO enabled and stuff. Then I2C support, very simple, pretty much by default here as well. I2C support, I don't need that, so I have disabled it, or it's disabled by default anyway. PTB hook support, I don't need that stuff, I'm not messing with that stuff. Yeah, we want to make sure our system can see stuff about the power supply, so we have this enabled. I know it's much stuff inside it as well, so we can keep track of that. We don't need this thing, so we have disabled. Multifunction EOS drivers, once again, we don't need any of this, so we disabled all the way inside. Multimedia support, I have webcam, so I have enabled. Okay, what's up with this configuration? It's weird. But I have my cameras enabled, I have my media USB adverts, and then just video class enabled, so I do have functional webcam support. Graphics support, now this one very much might change a lot. If you're using a video proprietary drivers, you want to make sure you have this enabled, and you want to make sure you have these two here enabled. You want to have the CFI if you're using UEFI, but you want to deselect everything else, so you only want to have that. And you also want to have the simple frame buffer support, which is needed for, you know, the simple frame buffer, which you need to actually output anything. If you're something else, you might want to enable something else, and if you're using like Novi, you might want to might want to enable this, and so on. Up to you what you need. This stuff I don't really worry about. Console, once again, same thing, default. Boot up logo I have disabled. If you want a boot up logo, you can enable it. I don't want it, so I have it disabled. And you also want to make sure you have this AGB part thing enabled and this VGR partition thing enabled. If you're running NVIDIA at least. You should look at your actual responsive wiki page for the things you need. Now, sound card, I need it. I have USB sound devices. I need that basically. I need the USB driver enabled. That's all I need really here. HID, once again, same thing. I showed this earlier. I'm not really going deep into it. USB support. Now I disabled these XHCI stuff. And OHCI, blah 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 stuff I need. I have disabled a bunch like wireless stuff, USB printer support. I need that stuff. I do want to have USB mesh storage, also USB drives work. I want to let's see, do I have anything else enabled? I don't think I have anything else enabled here really actually. But I want to make sure I have all of these things enabled, just to make sure things work. Because your USB ports aren't going to work unless you have this stuff enabled. Of course, you can disable like USB 2.0 if you want and stuff like that. We don't need SD card support because we don't have anything to do with that, so we have that disabled. LED support, I have not none of the special stuff. I don't need it. I don't need this stuff either. So I have disabled, but I do have LEDs whole enabled as I need to have. A real-time clock, yeah, enabled. Why not? It's very useful to have that. Actually keep things on track with the computer clock, I guess, or something. I don't know what actually does, but once again, we don't have virtualization, so I've disabled that. Retire drivers. What do I need? What is this for? I'm skipping it in because there's no date on it, though it might actually have to do with like virtualization or something. I don't know. We want to have IO UMMU enabled and with Intel here. And once again, you want to do AMD if you're AMD. Soundbar, we don't need any of that stuff. SOC, we don't need any of that stuff. It's total nonsense for us. Just a bunch of unnecessary things disabled. I want to make sure disabling Android stuff unless you're installing Android on here for some reason. And yeah, everything else pretty much not there. So now we move on to file systems. As you can see, I have enabled ext4 like this. Nothing else really. I have enabled this POSIX file queue thing. Kill super blah blah, but I also have enabled Fuse. This one is needed for my phone to work. With the for MTP, which is what phones use to work. We have this enabled. We have this enabled, of course, for our CD-ROMs to work. Because I do have a DVD drive actually. We do have that enabled. They have network file systems disabled because I don't use network file systems, so up to you how you do it. Miscellaneous, I don't need any of this, so I have it disabled. Sudo, we have the stuff that's needed. I haven't mentioned security options really, so if you want to do something with security, feel free to do so. Was there something I did something with? I don't think there is. No, do I have something here as well? I don't know. I don't think so. Yep, I don't think so. I don't have anything in other routines. I think I have something here. No, let's see. What did I have it in here? This is here that I have something. I think I have disabled something here. I don't remember why it is though, so I don't recall why this oh, what's the RCU debugging? Yeah, you want to bird disable a whole bunch of stuff here if there's something enabled. In any case, I think I have pretty much everything configured. As you can see, I'm here once again. I have OpenRC enabled. I want to save our config, no changes because it's our thing that I know works. Then what I want to do is go here. So I want to begin by making. We can actually do make J7 to do it faster. If you want to do like Xorgs and stuff, you might want, or graphics drivers, you want to check the separate pages for those on your own from the wiki. My options work with my NVIDIA card and my Intel CPU, but it's only mine, so look it up on your own. Now we have actually finished the make process, so as you can see, it has turned a bunch of things, and now it's done. So what we want to do next is we want to go back into here, because it seems to have gone to the downloads thing, and we want to make modules install. This installs our modules, I think, or something. It sounds like it installs modules, so we'll do that. And then I want to make install, which basically just installs the kernel to our boot partition and stuff. So now we have that set. Now we want to make an Initramfs. We are going to, you could do it with kernel. We are going to use a thing called Dragot. Can we stop with the scrolling? Anyway, we're going to emerge something again. We're going to emerge Dragot or Dragot. Now I have actually installed the Dragot program. As I said, you can use kernel, but I'm using Dragot. It's a more lightweight way of making Initramfs, and you don't need Initramfs always, depends on your hardware, but I do need one, so I make one, I think. So we'll have to install our, we'll have to actually make the Initramfs with Dragot. So first we want to find what our, okay, this didn't do anything useful, so yeah, I guess that makes sense. So actually I want to, what you probably want to do is, ls/user/src. We want to see our kernel name. And what I want to do now is Dragot host only caver Linux 5.10.27. These probably the same as on the main system, so I'll have to see how this goes. But we're actually installing it on this, so it should be fine. So we'll just do this, and then we wanted to host only because I'm not doing virtual machines. I'm not running this in a virtual machine. I'm only running it on my system, so we can do the host only thing. Then we want to do, it seems our Linux part is missing, but yeah, we only want to do, like, I guess the numbers of the actual version. So now we have our Initramfs made. As you can see, we have our Initramfs here. We have this made, so if you ls/boot, we can see we have actually an Initramfs. So we have an Initramfs for it, and that means we are doing our job. So we have a kernel, we have an Initramfs, and we can continue from that point onward and actually continue with getting things done. And indeed, that's all we needed from Dragot. So it's a very simple process. You can use something else if you want to. The game kernel has it here. You can just use Dragot, and I recommend doing so. Now we don't want to use this because this is how to install the kernel with game kernel. If you want to do that, go ahead. Distributing kernels, once again, go ahead. And yeah, we don't need this stuff because yet. Now, if you need to manually configure modules, you can. I don't need to worry about that. On my soundbites. Now, we want to, because I'm running like NVIDIA driver stuff, I'm going to want the Linux firmware thing, so we are just going to install the Linux firmware package. Shouldn't take long, it's a small install. But yeah, we're going to install the Linux firmware, which allows us to, for drivers and stuff to work. So it's a good idea to install this if you use like drivers of any kind, really. Then we configure our system next, and indeed we are done with that previous thing. So now I want to make an apps tab. An apps tab is basically where your files are stored, or not files, sorry, but your directory layout, where things should be mounted. So we're going to edit it. You can see there's kind of a default thing here. What we want to do is extra things. So we want to do blk id nvme 0 and 1. Okay, I guess that doesn't do anything, so we'll just do blk id. Now we can find our, I guess you have to do like partitions if you want to do it specific for partitions, but we need our partitions here. We're just going to, let's say I want to take a root partition to begin with. Let's copy that. I have selected to copy, so I'll just, actually I'll select the whole UUID thing. You want to probably use UUIDs for this stuff. So, we go, let's see, where's our, this our root partition, so we want to do, then I want to paste this. We want to remove the bracket parts, and we'll have our root partition down in here. We'll change some other settings later as well, then we'll, let's find another partition, our boot partition, yes, we definitely want this one. We definitely want our boot partition, our system ain't doing much otherwise, we want to have this. Then we want to do, I guess we'll do this VFAT, I think is the appropriate one here. And then you want to, we just leave this be defaults for now. I'm going to copy paste my existing one once again, as you know. And basically you want to keep doing it this way and paste your UIDs here, you get the idea. We just not save it because we're copy pasting things anyway. So once again, I'll cp/etc/fs. Or I'm copying it and then modifying it because I have some options set here. So /mnt/gentoo /etc/fstab, and then once again, I forgot to do this root, so I want to make sure I'm actually doing this root. Okay, I forgot to make a gap. Now we made a gap, and now it works also. Why is it scrolling? Somebody explain to me, why is it scrolling? It's so annoying. So now I want to go back to our Fs tab. We have a different UIDs. These are not the ones we want, but I think we can paste our boot partition UID here already. And you can see how I set some settings here, 0.2 here instead of 1.2, etc. I have set no time, discard for taking it faster. I have my stop set up and no time discard. Once again, it's stuff I have set up here, and of course I want to go back to our BLK ID here and I want to start copy pasting these things as I go. So I want to take our root partition again, and then we'll do for F68. That's my, yep, I got that correctly. But yeah, what you want to do is, you'll have to type this manually, unless you already have a file. But the idea is you type in the UIDs, for each partition in accordance with how they are here, and with directories, and then you just kind of live with it. Why is the goddamn scrolling happening? I'm seriously getting annoyed by it. It's so annoying. And yeah, we don't have mount point for the stop, of course. We just put our stop here. And then we want to find our home partition. So that's that. As you can see, it's labeled as being home here. So yeah, that's how you do your partitions. It's very simple. You just have your UIDs, then you have the actual file directory of it, the partition, then you have the format of it, is it ext4, is it bfat, is it none, or is it like swap, or whatever. Then you have like your settings for it, and then you have some numbers. You can see how mine are. I have 0.2 for pretty much everything. For root, I think I have 0.1. So yeah, I have 0.1 for the root, everything else is 0.2 pretty much, I think. Oh, extra swap, it is 0.0. So now our fstab should be set up, I think, properly-ish. Let's just check that our UIDs are matching up. Yep, our root partition matches up. Our boot partition messed up, so we want to make sure everything is correct. We don't want to mess that up, and then we, yep, everything matches up, so we should have a correct fstub. And yeah, also that copy pasting thing won't work for you unless you, I mean, I guess you do have an fstub file already, so you can paste that one and then replace the UIDs if you want to. Moving on, we want to stop our network. Now we want to do something. Let's just, before we get into this, let's install DHCP CD. Because I want to use DHCP to actually do things, so I'll just DIY on that. It won't take long to install, it's a small package. And now we have that installed. So now we want to actually edit the host name. Now I'm going to set this one to match my current one, which is Gentoo. Like this. Now I want to go here. Or actually, do we need to go here? No, we need to mess with this. Let's see, how do you want to do this with the DHCP? Yep, we're going to go to all of that later, so we're not going to do anything with that yet. So we'll just emerge this package, which is our network management thing. If you want to use something else, I guess you can, up to you. Radius one always sets as a very favorite, I guess. Then we want to now go into here. We want to set some things. Actually, before that, we want to do something else. We want to do IP link. We see what our thing is called. It's called EMP3S0 in my case. It already got something else, so make sure an IP link and just check what it's called. Now you want to do config, whatever your network interface is called, and then we want to do DHCP if there is DHCP. If you're not doing it, you need to do it manually. I shown in the wiki. I'm doing with DHCP because it's convenient, really. So now we can go here and we can do this, except for one thing. We have to change this to EMP3S0, so whatever your actual network interface is called, you want to change that, and then we just do our C update, and then we'll add once again EMP3S0 default. And now my network for that is in the network default, so it starts at boot, which I want. Now I want to make our host file. As you can see, the structure is very simple. We're once again going to do more copying because it's simpler to copy, and my current one should work flawlessly in that one, so it should be fine. So if it just does cp slash etc slash host, I believe is what it's called. Yep. And then I want to put it to slash mnt slash gentoo slash etc slash hosts. And now we should be pretty much set up for that. So if you do actually now w slash etc slash hosts, we can see we actually have this set up like this. So this is how my system would work. You have this 0.111, 0.0.0.1, and this well, this one I take this from the Arch wiki because that's one has always worked for me, so I'm using that format. Feel free to use that as well. We are not using PCMCA, we are not using that old technology. Now I want to set a password for our root, so we want to do pass WD, and we want to type in a password. But we have it changed now, so now I have a new password. Now there's some stuff I might change here, so let's look at our boot configuration. We want to enable a few things. RC Perl, absolutely, yes, we want that enabled. And that's about it. Now I want to go here. We want to change our key maps. So we want to make sure we have our key maps set up. I have mine in the finished key map layout, so I'm going to change the FH. Make sure it's whatever you need it to be. I don't need to change this one because this one has the hardware clock, which I already have set up, so it's fine. Now I want system logger, so I know uh, sysk logged. Oh yeah, we don't have DOS here. We are just running under chroot, so it's enabling that and leaving it be basically. And also I'm setting as default, of course. So I want to set as default. Very simple matters. We are truly setting it as a default thing, and it's going to work through that. Then we are going to not worry about current daemon. I don't need one. File indexing, yes, I want file indexing. I want to be able to locate. Actually, we don't need this one. I don't want this one. We don't need a SH either, so we're just going to move on this. We want to enable. What we do want to install is those FS tools. The ext4 thing is already enabled, so we don't need to worry about that. I do want to enable those tools because this allows us to work with FAT32 file systems. So whatever is your whatever you need for whatever your file systems are, make sure it's on the correct tool here. In my case, that was bigger than the ext4 one, but we needed the FI one, and I got that. We don't need IHO network tools, we don't need network manager or anything because we're using Ethernet, so we can just move on to here. We already have the HCPCD because I already set it up. We don't need the wireless stuff. So now we're setting a bootloader. Let's use grub because I like grub. So we want to, well, we want to begin by installing our grub. Though if our UEFI, we want to make sure we actually use this command. Basically, this puts grub platforms equals CFI64 to our make.conf. I already have it in there because I copied it earlier, but if you're using UEFI, you want to do this. Then we can just install this package because I already have that info. And I see we're installing a EFI boot MGR and stuff like that, which we need. Now let's merge this. And now it kind of just does its thing and installs its grub. And then after that, we actually need to install the thing. We aren't actually installing grub on our bootloader. We are only installing the package for it. We need to actually enable it. And we should have grub now. We should now have the grub package installed so we can actually go on this. So instead of doing what's here, we are going to do this because we're UEFI. So I want to do, it's a very simple matter. You just want to make sure you have your EFI directory set up and yeah, no errors here. So now we actually have our installed, however, it's not done yet. We want to actually configure it, and it's a very simple command. It's grub amkconfig -o /boot grub/grub.cfg. So I want to do that. So I want to make sure it picks up our Initramfs. Yes, it does. It picked up our Linux. Good. Actually, we want to redo the installation process. Why? Because my system needs the removal flag to work. So we're going to redo that and we're going to reconfigure it. If you want that with other systems as well, you need to do those per burr, but I don't do that, so I don't worry about it. But yeah, I have this type configured. You might want to actually use the removable flag here. It might be needed depending on your system. At least MSM Waterbirds tend to like to need it, and mine does. So that's what that does. Now we should have graph pretty much set up. So if you scroll down, we can see I have pretty much done. So we can just exit. Then we can start unmounting things. So we can then we can try to unmount this. It's busy, so it doesn't actually unmount. That's fine. We'll just remove the home partition. Okay, I guess we're not going to unmount anything. So now we should have Gentoo installed. I'll hope this was helpful. I hope this got you through it. And If you have any questions, feel free to ask me up. This is the basic installation. There's some more configuration we can do. So, for instance, for finalization, we're not adding a user yet to produce in our thing, but we will do this. Okay, I guess. Uh, let's see. Yep, we want to make sure we actually have a dot here. And now that's enabled. So now if we actually run ls again, it's no longer there. So now we don't have our tarball anymore because we clearly don't need it. So now we have Gentoo installed. It ain't going top at all. Well, and what this means is we should have bootable system. I'll record something on my phone, I guess, and boot the system up, and we can see if it works or not. So hope you had fun watching this. I'll show that in a minute, and have a good day. If something doesn't work, if you have questions, let me know. I'm fairly confident in the process, so I can help you out probably. But yeah, comment down below any feedback, any ideas, any comments, any mistakes I made. Let me know. And yeah. So as you can see here, we are currently booted. It seems our Initramfs was indeed the issue, and we are now booted without issues. So let me get a tripod and get right into it and actually getting this thing to run. And now, as you can see, I have a tripod set up. So if I go ahead and go onto my keyboard, we can see does our keyboard work. Does our internet keyboard, but and yes, our internet works. Perfect. We have a functional internet, we have a functional computer, we have a functional everything. Of course, we don't have any UI or anything. Now, let's, for the fun of it, let's install NeoFetch, because why the heck not? Oh god, there's all stuff coming in with this. But sure, let's install all of it. Though first, we need to run the aforementioned dispatchconf. So, yeah. Now we can run NeoFetch, and I think it's going to be a lot less stuff. Yep. Less much stuff than before. Anyway, I will pause the video again and I'll let this happen, I guess, and once it does happen, I see you then again. So now we have successfully installed NeoFetch. So if we just go ahead and clear this all up, then we should be able to run a NeoFetch, and here we go. We can see a 55 megabyte memory usage. It is Gentoo, so it makes sense that there will be very low usage. And we are running our CPU, as you can see there, my GPU. We don't have any drivers for it yet though. And we're running, of course, Bash. We're in this 5.10 kernel that we have. My host is just whatever the heck it calls my computer. And yeah, you can see it's called Gentoo because that's what I call my computer, and so on. We are in the root account, and here we go. So it is all functional and good.